Hey guys, back with another Echoing Thoughts podcast here, episode number 16. And sorry I missed last week. I was planning on doing this podcast last week, but things kind of got a little hectic in my life. Was actually trying to run a little bit more Lotus on a alt bishop with a new team, first timers. So that took quite a bit of time. And yeah, but here we are, episode number 16. And we're going to talk about tiers list, mainly this max damage cap 20 mil chart. Um, just excited. This is pretty cool that Song and his team kind of upgraded their tiers list, try to make it more balanced. And we're gonna break it down and walk through it and kind of give my opinion and my take and just you know get excited about it. I think this is pretty sweet that they did this. Just makes it kind of what they wanted, make it more balanced, give a better indication, displaying kind of showcasing how balanced or unbalanced in this case the game really is to give the devs a better kind of understanding of what the real data that they have out there that they've been collecting. So before we talk about that, kind of the best thing I saw this past week or in the past kind of 2 weeks was, well, got to shout out my team, my Lotus team. We had me on the Bishop. We had a few guildies, a few first timers. Well, most of them are first timers with their first clear. I think about 6, 7 of them maybe were first timers, and our team comp wasn't the greatest at all. You'll kind of see it. I'll post it in YouTube channel later this week. But we had no mages. The bishop was the only mage. We had one paladin, one phantom, a buccaneer. We had 3 different archers: a wind archer, pathfinder, and a marksman. So it wasn't even a Mercedes. And we had 2 DKs kind of holding down the mobbing and a shade. I think that was it. That was a team comp. And oh, and we had a Pathfinder. But yeah, that was a team comp. We, kind of grinded through it. We wanted to clear last week. We weren't able to get it done. We were really, really close. Kind of unfortunate things happened. Someone got bounded. Weren't able to clear. We didn't have enough buffs to try again. Just a lot of things happened, but overall, it was Monday, the April 3rd. We got it done. First clear of the day. Super excited for the team. Happy for them. A lot of achievements, and I'm excited to progress further with this group of people that have been, grinding it out with me. I've been trying to do my best to, encourage them. I think one of the things that I learned, just doing this all over again, it's been about 6, 7 months since our first clear on my paladin. So it's been a while, right? And we've been, before that it was Arc, but I'm kind of going through that grind. But this Lotus all over again takes a lot of patience. It can be frustrating at time. I think Lotus is one of those bosses that kind of really exposes everyone, right? There's nothing in the game that requires you doing damage while also jumping, taking, the ladder, portals, things like that. It's just one of a kind. It's unique while trying to dodge lasers, trying to dodge debris, trains, trying to do damage. There's nothing like it. And it's understandable that people have a hard time, right? I'm not saying anything. And I think honestly, this time was much more challenging for newer players trying to clear than it was back when we were clearing, when we got our first clear, because it feels like there's more added pressure with clearing before reset to get those coins, right? To not fall behind with those absolute crystals, and to progress your gear. And I just feel like people now are expected to clear in a week's time, right? Pick it up just like that. The lasers, do enough damage, all the things to take everything in that we before had months and months of time to get reps, get practice, to fail, to learn, and find ways to improve. People are expected to do it in 1 week, 2 weeks max, or they're getting replaced, or they're getting, we're finding new people that are ready to go. And it just feels like now it's more achievable. It's more possible than ever to actually clear Lotus, but it also feels like the stress level, the anxiety, the added pressure feels greater than it ever was before. And so really shout out to the team. They got it done. It took us, little under 2 weeks. Well, it wasn't, 2 weeks, less than maybe like 10 attempts for these guys for their first timers. So that's that's insane. Honestly, I think if you guys are listening or people that are just trying to do Lotus for the first time, you can't be discouraged if you're failing, right? That's part of the process. Everyone goes through it. Um, Honestly, clearing in less than 10 times or whatever it is, whatever numbers it is guarantee better than our success rate back when we first started. So definitely shout out to you guys. Anyone that's cleared, shout out to the team, shout out to anyone that's cleared Lotus recently for the first time. Congrats, man. Get those coins and really the monkey off your back. I feel like after we get that first clear, everyone just can relax, can breathe, and get it out of the way. And I guarantee you, our next run, we're going to do much better. It's going to be much smoother. There's going to be less tension, not as much sweaty hands. And I think just the DPS is going to go up. The time is going to get much better. People are going to feel much more comfortable, and it's going to become much smoother. So I'm excited for our team and for anyone that's cleared Lotus. That is just, it was a fun process to go through again. I don't miss trying to coordinate times and things like that and get everyone on the same page and get everyone, practice and ready to go. But we did it, and it was well worth it to get that clear with the team that I did. So shout out to them. But before I get into this 20 mil max damage cap, I want to answer a few questions. I've been getting a lot in Discord and in DMs, YouTube, things like that, and a few kind of stuck out that I've been getting consistently. The first thing was about nodes. This is kind of an in-between time where people are deciding, should they sell nodes? Should they be saving up for V3 coming up in July? Or should they be using it to invest in their V1 or V2 skills to, get more damage now? And I think it's different for everyone. If you don't have your boost nodes up to level 60, that's priority number one. No matter what, you should not be selling nodes if your boost nodes are not level 60. That's number one. But if you're past that, like most people are, then it kind of becomes situational, right? Maybe you have other things. Maybe you're selling nodes to invest in something that you're lacking, right? You need a piece of armor that you see on trade station. Maybe that will help you build up your gear better, or whatnot. There's something that you want to do. Maybe increase your cap first versus a certain V skill that's not that beneficial. Waiting for V3 is, I think, the biggest reward if you wait for V3 is that possibly they change their node system to where you can only pull boost nodes or skill nodes that are for your class specific. So that's what they have in Korean Maplestory. They just recently implemented it, but now people are hoping that they hoard up their nodes, that when that patch comes to global, then it's obviously more effective and efficient with your nodes, because everything you get is actually going to be straight directly for your class, whether it's a V1, V2, V3 skill, whatever it is. So I think that's the benefit for waiting for V3. But usually what I tell people is there's so many nodes are so cheap in all servers. There's so many different ways to get nodes through auto battling, whether you're whatever level you are. It just feels like nodes are flying right now. We're getting a ton of them. And I would say if your V1 and V2 skills aren't maxed, I highly recommend you invest in it right now. That's instant increase to damage, whether it's a skill like Divine Echo, where it increases duration of that skill. In my opinion, that's the best. That's priority number one, right? Just like if you're Nightwalker, if you're like a hero, if you're any class that has a duration-based skill, if you get half a second or one more second of those skills, it's guarantee free passive damage, especially in a longer fight, longer, like Lotus, it adds up. Every level adds up. And I think that has to be priority number one. So like if you're a Paladin, Divine Echo, that's all your damage. You don't do any damage when Divine Echo is down. So every level was one more second added to Divine Echo. That is all your damage. That's what you have to be investing in. You can't be waiting for V3, no matter how good V3 for Paladins are, whatever your class is, that takes priority. Duration-based V skills should be priority number one. And for warriors, weapon aura, everyone has that. Paladins have 3 duration-based skills. So definitely want to invest in those. But even if you have instant cast skills, like think like a dual blade, phantoms, even Night Lords, things like that, where it's like a shorter cooldown skill, but it's instant cast, I still think those have benefits, right? Because like I talked about in my DPS video last podcast, you don't get any boost nodes, that extra boost nodes of 120% final damage that you get from level 60 trio, right? But every level is going to increase that skill for that specific, the skill percent for that specific skill. And that adds up, right? That is going to help. It's a ton. It's not, it's like 5, 10, 15, 20, 20%, 25% per level sometimes, depending on the skill. And that is free damage, right? Free damage to the skill that you're using frequently, that is on a short cooldown, that is part of your rotation, high priority in your rotations. It's extremely beneficial. And even some these skills lower the cooldowns of these skills, so they come up even faster every 5 levels or whatever it is. A lot of classes have that as well with their V2s. Get to that 5 level mark, level 1, level 5, level 10, at least, before you move on to other skills. I think that is just huge benefit with the skill percent increase on top of the lowered cooldown or increased duration, whatever it is. It's hard to complain. It's hard to say otherwise. It's hard for me to say do anything but invest in your V1 and V2 skills. Just because it's pretty guaranteed, right? There's no RNG. There's no risk of not getting any reward or benefit. You just pull nodes, you just open them and craft them. Even if you don't get anything, each node, you're leveling up a trio, or you're getting a boost node or a skill node. It's all beneficial, right? You can extract them, and it's gonna progress and be better in the long run. So my number one tip, if you have nodes, if you need to improve V skills, highly recommend it. Pulling it, not waiting for V3. You don't know what the future may hold. Node prices are only going down and down no matter what. There's just so much in stock across the servers. Now's the time, in my opinion, whether you're farming it or you're buying it off a trade station. And then another question, kind of quick second question that I get was more for free-to-play players, right? It was just about emblem setup. What is the priority about which emblems to focus on first? Armors, which armor piece? What emblems to go for? And right now in the current meta, if you can get crit damage, that's priority number 1. And if you can get certain armors like the Jaihin, the ones that give crit damage percent for the hat and the shoes, you want to focus on that. All right, that's priority number 1. Crit damage emblem if possible. If not, BA. BA is a great second option. I talked about it before. Don't sleep on boss attack. It still increases your damage. It's still going to be great, especially for those players that are, lacking funding or trying to be as efficient as possible with their resources. Definitely boss attack is the best bang for your buck. CD percent seems to be so inflated, and people will pay the premium for crit damage percent when it's really not that big of a difference. But as far as priority, armors, it doesn't really matter, in my opinion. Kind of just what usually the people just like to do it in order from top to bottom, just because it looks nice on your player card. What I usually recommend is number 1, though, it has to be a weapon. It has to be a weapon and your secondary weapon. Because not only does it give you an emblem, it gives you more attack. A non-emblem weapon and secondary weapon versus an emblem weapon has a gap in physical magic attack. So you definitely want to prioritize that, invest in a good weapon, secondary weapon with a good emblem, because that is your base and that is what is going to give you best bang for your buck. And then as far as armors, it doesn't really matter. Like I said, just find the ones that are cheap, wait around and slowly level them. And you want to level them to at least evenly level 1, level 3 at least. You can stop at level 4 across the board before you try for level 5s. But I would highly recommend stop at level 4 for all your emblems, and then slowly, as you got all of them to level 4, then slowly get them to level 5 if you even feel like it's necessary, if you have the funding for it. But that's sort of the priority list for emblems and for those free-to-play players. Hope that helps you guys as well. But if you have any other questions, don't be afraid to DM me on Discord. Email me, echoingthoughtspodcast@gmail.com. People email me there as well. Comment in the YouTubes, whatever it is, you guys can find me. I'm always answering questions and helping you guys out. If you want me to break it down more in the podcast, love to do it. But let's get into this meat and potatoes of this podcast. This is kind of what I want to talk about. This is what Song and his team. So if you don't know, Song is this great guy who basically put together, I think it's him and some other friends, put together this chart, basically accumulating data for all the top all the classes in all of content, from Mulong, Covert, Guild Dungeon, Ard Magnus, Arc, Lotus, everything. Guild Dummy, Guild Honor Battle, single, multi, every class across the board. They got the cap, they got the cap numbers, they got the times for Mulong, they got it sectioned off for warriors, mages, archers, thieves, pirates. They even have at the bottom best times for Arc and for Lotus. Pretty sweet. Pretty sweet. So, I mean, this is a lot of data, right? This is awesome. They for a long time have been doing this, and the class tiers list was just strictly based off of raw numbers, who had the highest number. And so you'll see here, yeah, so you just see this is Lotus. So Lotus, you're just looking at this J column right here, and you'll just see all of these numbers. And I'll add this into the comments below if you guys want to take a look at it yourself. So definitely you can see the wide range. Like the red right here is the highest numbers, I'm pretty sure. So like Guild Dungeon, Blasters, 1.5. Jesus Louise. That's insane. Night Lords, 172 Arc. What? How is that even possible? I didn't even see that. Lotus, almost 90 bill. But you can see these numbers are just astronomical and just dwarfing other classes. And that's what basically what they did to kind of take it up a notch. Song and his team was create this tiers list at 20 mil max damage cap. Basically trying to create equal funding, like they're saying. And the reason they made this is to give the devs, so they have remarks here, right? Basically saying they wanted to have a more accurate, provide a more accurate data analysis. That the devs can make class rebalances adjustments that are in line with this, right? In the actual environment in the gameplay based on the actual data. They said that, they wanted ideally for the state to be similar to Korean server, right? They were the strongest and weakest, or should be within 30%. And so, and they wanted people with that are investing in their classes to feel like they're actually getting somewhere, right? That their investment is worth it. That their resources you invest can actually, outperform other classes in certain content. And right now they just feel like, and a lot of people feel like the game is just incredibly imbalanced, and the numbers kind of back it up, right? So they have right here, the analysis is strongest class, 67 bill DPM. This is at 20 mil max damage cap. That's insane. So like, for reference, right? How many classes just period without even the max damage cap buffer are above 67 bill? Dark Knight, Blaster, Paladin, three warriors. Ice Lightning Mage. Sorry, this is Lotus DPM. So not even boss damage. So Dark Knight, 64, not even. Paladins, yep. Blasters, yep. No mages are above 67, no matter what the cap is. They got one, the Mercedes is at 70, pretty insane. Wild Hunters, 67. So that's 1, 2, that's 1, 2, 3. You can say 4 for Wild Hunters. 5 Phantoms. 5 classes, no matter of the max damage cap. Some of these classes have 25 mil cap, 24, 25, and they're just above the average dual blade at 20 mil max damage cap. That's pretty insane. 89 bill. This is like 75 versus 89 is second place. 15 bill difference. And that's what people are talking about, right? Why is this number so high, right? Why is someone with 26 mil cap, like even if they have 20 mil cap, even if they're all equal, they're dwarfing these other classes by almost 2 times is what they're saying at equal funding. So this is kind of what the data is saying. Even over the median, it's almost 1.5 times. So just craziness, right? It's craziness. Dual blades, even Mercedes kind of came out of nowhere to a lot of people, but Mercedes have been strong for a long time. They just are underrepresented. There's just not a lot of people playing it, but there will be very soon, especially with V3 coming out. Mercedes arguably has the best, most insane V3 burst in the game. They are going to be disgusting. Yeah, if you're like another archer and thinking about rerolling, Mercedes is definitely a good option. Definitely a good option. But what the data is saying basically is that dual blades 67, Mercedes 67, kind of go down the list, pallet blasters, phantom shadowers, and all the way down to the lowest is Iran, 35 bill DPM. So that's what people are concerned about, right? That's such a huge gap. And I have a few takes on this. But just based off of this, first of all, I think the thing people have to understand is Lotus is arguably the worst gauge of damage in the game, right? Maybe Chaos Vellum back in the day, but there is no boss that is as bad at gauging boss DPM, I feel like, as Lotus. Just because there are so many factors that you cannot control. You can play a perfect run and you could get 3 straight purple orb phases and not be able to attack for 45 seconds, right? Or you could do everything right and you could run into a laser that switches on the wrong timing while you're taking the ladder and you could die. There are just so many different factors that it's like, even someone that's, for me, that's run 6-7 months straight every week still has no idea why my damage was higher when I was party EXP hyper without boss rush compared to now with full DPS hypers, perfect runs, faster times, boss rush, and it's still not faster because I got 2 purple orb phases, or something happened along the way that just, there's bad timing here and there where my damage just wasn't as high. And I'm not the only one that feels like this. I've talked to a lot of people and they just, when they feel like, it's not like Covert or Guild Dungeon where you feel like if you have increased stats, you're using boss rush potion, your damage would naturally just go up because that just makes sense. But for Lotus, for some reason, it doesn't always translate 1-to-1. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but there's so many factors that have to be having a perfect run for it to translate to this damage. And that's kind of my point number one. And we're just going to focus on Lotus. We're not even going to look at overall bomb damage, just bomb damage. But I think that's number one. Lotus is a hard gauge of damage. Now, this is nothing, I want people to understand this is nothing against Song and his team, right? This is just, all they're doing is, what they're doing is amazing, right? Is God's work, right? They're taking their time, accumulating data from so many different angles and people, and they're updating this. They created this on their own. They just want a balanced game. They just want, they love this game, right? And they want it to be, they don't want it to die. They just want there to be longevity in the game and for people to stop complaining and for it to be more balanced than ever. And so people, because the diversity in the game is what makes it amazing, right? So many different classes, they keep introducing new ones. People want to play them, right? But if they're not performing well, why would they re-roll or take a chance or come back to the game, right? So the diversity in the game, so many different classes, is what makes Maplestory amazing. But at the same time, it can kind of be the curse, the kryptonite as well. But the thing, after kind of talking about the boss, I think the second thing that stands out for me is just understanding. So when I looked at this, I looked at it where I assumed that all of these players that are playing these classes are the best of the best at their class, right? That's given. That's a safe assumption because Lotus is arguably the most skill dependent boss in the game. Like I mentioned, it's extremely hard to, no matter how good your gear is, if you don't know what you're doing out there, you will get exposed and you will die a ton, and your DPS will suffer immensely, right? So mechanics this is the kind of assuming that these are the best players of the best players. So if these are the best players at their class, bar none, right? We'll get that out of the way, kind of make it even. What's the difference between, so then you're probably saying then it's the class, right? Then obviously the only other factor is class, but I would disagree. I think just the sheer amount of data points of these top tier classes versus these bottom tier classes is astronomical. What do I mean by that? Well, if you have, say, every Lotus team that is cleared, probably 9 out of 10 at least, maybe 95 out of 100, had a dual blade, had a phantom, had a paladin, right? So from the first clear ever, right? So that you could say that is what? Let's just say it's 100 teams. They might have 2 phantoms, they might have 2 dual blades, whatever it is. Let's just say there's 200 dual blades that have cleared different dual blades that have cleared Lotus just once, right? Compared to these lower tier classes, Pathfinders, Arons, Demon Avengers, how many think, even if they cleared from day one, even if they cleared 6 months ago, that just in comparison is maybe a handful of each class that has cleared Lotus, and maybe a handful of them even have, maybe some of them haven't even been clearing until recently, since they got buffed in the rebalance, right? So just the sheer amount of difference in data points from like these top tier classes that have such great representation, to have such high damage, compared to these bottom tier classes, is just so different, right? And it just allows for dual blades for these classes that have more exposure. It's just more data, right? It's just across the board. The variance is there, but it's also, the highs and the lows, right? There's a wide range of gear built in, right? The top, there's just a higher chance of there being the 1% of the 1% in gear, in mechanics, in being the top class, versus Arons. Maybe it's the best player that plays his class, but maybe their gear doesn't compare, right, to a top dual blade or whatever it is. They're not as invested. And again, max damage cap is, I think they mentioned it in the remarks, but max damage cap is the easiest way to measure balance, in a sense, because that's the first thing that people look at when it comes to damage. What's your cap? But there's so many other factors other than cap that affect damage, especially for some of these classes, right? Especially for a lot of these classes where the cap starts getting so high. So every class has smaller lines that don't cap, that aren't affected by that cap, but it's affected by other percent stats, or maybe physical attack, things like that are decent nodes leveled, that maybe these lower tier classes just aren't being exposed to, but it can't be represented in this chart. Again, it's not the chart's fault, it's just fact, right? It's just things that you can't just look at it on that surface level. You have to look kind of a little deeper and understand that is the case. So just sheer amount of data points for these top tier classes sort of makes it not like, it's almost impossible not to be the top of these classes, because there's just so many more data points to pull from. There's so many more options, right? It's bound for one of them to be the 1%, the best of the best of the best, or have a perfect run with the perfect RNG, with the perfect team and things like that. And the second thing to build off of that is that one of the things that, if you have two of the best players at their class, right, one of each, what is the deciding factor? The class, yes, but it's also experience, right? And again, if dual blades have been clearing since day one, 7 months ago, paladins, phantoms, all of that, that's 7 times 4, 28, say 30 clears, right? 30 clears, that's clears, not including even fails and attempts previously, just reps. So say there's, each of these players has 30 clears, and you multiply that by each player, that's, again, the number just keeps growing. The amount of data points just keep growing compared to an Aron. Say there's 5 Arons that have cleared Lotus, right? On top of the fact that maybe it just happened recently. So maybe the 5 Arons only had 5 clears. That's 25 clears across 5 different players. While one dual blade has more clears than the entire Aron population, right? So it's just that number of data points just gets exponentially greater for dual blades. The pool of options to pull from these top tier classes just gets exponentially greater when you count the factor that there's so many more players, there's so many more clears, and there's just so much more, for a boss that has so much RNG and factors, things that can affect damage, it's obvious, right? That these classes are going to just, with more data, you're going to have the best possible opportunity to kind of showcase the top potential. So that is sort of my take on it. Something that I kind of initially was thinking back, I was like, and also like a lot of these, we just had a rebalance 22 classes 3 weeks ago, right? So a lot of these classes on the bottom got buffed, right? There's still only 3 clears since that rebalance, right? And dual blades have on the top of the top haven't got changed for forever, right? Since Explorer Remaster. And so these players of these classes that are just got rebalanced have only had three real runs to test out their DPS. If they got poor orb RNG, then maybe they died a few times. That's going to affect their damage immensely, right? And if they just did 5 bill more DPM, right? They had a little bit of a faster run. They died 1 fewer times. Maybe they progressed their gear a little bit more. Maybe they changed the rotation. They did a few things better to get more uptime and damage. If they just went up to 35 bill and they went up to 40 bill, right? They'd be over here, right? They wouldn't be bottom tier anymore. And then if they jumped up again, all it takes is, say they went up, say they started boss rush, they had kerning 50, double KT 50, things like that. They got more stats, and then they had the perfect run, and they went up. Maybe they dropped their team run was a minute faster, right? The team as a whole played better. Your DPS got higher naturally as the run got shorter, and they jumped up all the way over here. They did 42, 43 bill DPM. Then we wouldn't even be talking about them as the worst. They'd be, middle tier. They'd be in this B class, right? But as it stands, they've only had 3 runs since the rebalance. So of course they may not showcase their max potential, right? Even a Demon Avenger who's been clearing since for 6 months, you can't control what those 3 runs are going to be like. Like I said, a lot of times the best runs are when you least expect it, when you're not, when you're in party EXP back in the day, or you're not even boss rush pushing, or you're just using regular full buff. You're not even, you're not maximizing all the stats that you can. It's just Lotus is just a weird boss to gauge DPS off, but that's what we're doing, right? That's what we're doing. And it is what it is. That's the current state. But I think as we start to get more clears, more runs, a lot of these bottom tier classes start just getting more data points. I think these numbers are going to easily go up, right? I guarantee you Pathfinders can get higher than this if they just, if honestly, they just play a little bit better, right? 10% better, easily can get up to 40. And then everyone's at that line gets up to 35 up to 40, and the baseline, the bottom just starts to go up a little more, then the gap starts to shrink. And I think, as they start to get more clears, people get better. Again, who knows? But in my opinion, it's way too early to be, to kind of jumping to conclusions and calling for buffs, even more buffs, and saying that these 2 classes are so bad. At the end of the day, like, it's gonna, like, maybe they are bad, but you need more than just 3 weeks to prove it, right? You just need more than 3. You just had a rebalance. You need more time to kind of showcase that and prove that it's not that this class needs even more buffs. And I think that if I were to make sort of one thing that I noticed, right? A few things that I noticed, but one of the things I think, if I were to give feedback on this, right? I think that one, I'm not trying to shame it. Again, I think this is awesome and I love it. I love that they do this. It's just, it constantly changes. I saw this past week versus last week, it constantly changes. I mean, Mercedes wasn't up there until this past week, right? And they just shot up like cannon. It just feels like as I talked about data points from all the classes and experience as well, I'm curious what they're getting these actual numbers from, right? And I think what I've looked at is that all they're doing is, now it's not wrong of them, but what they did was they basically just took the world record number, they compared the cap, and they did some, they did math, simple math, to scale it down to 20 max damage cap to create that baseline, right? So for example, and I think the problem with that is they're only looking at one data point. After all this data that they're accumulating, right? They're trying to create this balance as much as possible. They're looking at one data point, the world record, which in theory you may think is the best number to go off of. But when you're trying to scale it down to 20 mil cap, you need more than that, right? In my opinion, there's so much more data that can actually show people, in my opinion, like what I've seen, for example, Paladins, right? 69, 70 bill with 24.8 mil cap. So that's how they got this number for Paladins, 56.37. Well, last week, the last week before Exorbis, the number one Paladin in the game, hit this number with his cap. The Paladin DPS was 62 bill. And how do I know that? Because that was mine. It was 62 bill because I was at 20 mil cap. So it fit right in perfectly. That was the world record, no matter the cap, whatever it is. That was the number that's in here. And all of a sudden, the world record changes and it goes down 6 bill DPM. It's a little strange, right? Like, that's a little strange, right? That doesn't create a good, if we're trying to give the best representation of what the classes are, this isn't it, right? So, and I can imagine, I already know that if that's just for Paladin class, I'm looking at the one class, then it definitely happens out there for other classes, right? I think I for sure know that Shadower, we have the top Shadower in our server. He did 50 bill plus DPM and he was at 18 mil cap, I think. So do the math. It might be close to this. It might be a little lower. But the point is that if just in my team in general, I'm thinking of all these scenarios where people have numbers that, that have numbers that could possibly be higher than what is represented. I can't even imagine what's going on in other, across everyone's team, right? And so, again, it's not their fault, right? But I think if we're trying to, it's just little input, right? If they wanted to maybe just add a simple another tab here to show Lotus boss DPM at 20 max damage cap, just so you can differentiate world record versus the 20 mil, what the 20 mil max damage cap number is based off of. If it's off the world record, then it's fine. But if it's off someone that did a certain amount of DPS at 18 mil cap, then that's what it should be associated off of, just so that it's more consistent. It just creates more, right? You can understand the gap, right? That's not going to change this dual blades one. It's not, I doubt that any dual blade is going to, at 17, 18 mil cap, is going to do, 60 bill DPM to beat this or whatever it is. But it may bring up the baseline. It may bring up these lower tier classes, kind of switch these people in here. Maybe they're at 46, 48, right? And that'll bring them all the way up here to this tier class. And you're like, oh. And it's not saying like if you're the 20th best class that you're not going to get rebalanced, that you're not going to get buffed. Like, I think if I were to say, like, other than that, I think this makes sense, right? It's pretty simple, straightforward. And I think it's, again, I'm nitpicking here, but if we're trying to do the best thing, if our goal is to present the devs a real display, and these guys they're not trying to hide anything, right? They're not trying to, skew the numbers or only choose certain data points that will give them the best representation or buff their classes. They're just putting data that they're handed to. So I think, one, if they change that, that'd be great. But I think it's on us as a community, right? If we really want to showcase this, the balance of the game, then we got to put our money where the mouth is, and we have to give our data to these guys, this team, Song, Rubido, whoever it is that is, inputting data here, so that it's not showing, it's not misrepresenting these classes, so that these classes aren't as bad as people think, right? If you're a Pathfinder, but like, again, if you're a Pathfinder or Demon Avenger, why would you, like, you have to why would one of these volunteer classes even submit their data to beat this, to bring up this world record number or this number, when they can hide it and they can say, oh, we're the worst class, we need more buffs, when in actuality other classes may need more buffs than you, right? People have to do their kind of duty to the rest of the community to share their information, to not kind of be selfish, to not, want to only think of themselves, because that's what also plays a factor, right? If you're just only worried about yourself, and wanting buffs for your class, like, you don't see these top tier classes asking for buffs, right? Because they understand their classes are in a good place. They need the real people that really want to make a change understand that these bottom tier classes, like it's good to see Battle Mage not at the bottom. It's good to see Angelic Busters, Buccaneers actually not, the last place, right? They're all competing. So in my opinion, like if we really want to do justice to the game and have the game in a better place and actually get rebalances that are well deserved for those classes that really need it, we have to do our part. We have to submit data that will help, showcase this, right? If you know your Pathfinder and you do more than this with less than 20 mil cap or whatever it is, even more than 20 mil cap, you got to submit it, right? You got to show it. And that's why I talked about the Paladin, right? I could have easily said, 56 bill. We're not that good, right? We're not that good. But I mean, what am I doing here? Like that's not, like, no one would have noticed. No one would have cared because Paladins are obviously number 6 still. Like, why would a Paladin ever say, oh, we're actually number 2. We're actually number 3, right? When number 6 still pretty good, right? Because 6 isn't really going to get us nerfed. There's 3, it may, right? It may, but 6, nah, there's other classes ahead of it that will get nerfed first. That's not what we're trying to do here. We should all, we got to do our part. Again, I think this is awesome. I think that it's an upgrade from what he was doing. I already loved the previous thing that they did. I appreciate them for doing this. And I think that even more, they took it up another notch. And I had my feedback, my input. I loved it. Even if they kept it the way it was, the data points are going to show up, right? They're going to keep coming in. Classes are going to go up and down, things like that, change tiers. Pretty sweet. Pretty awesome. Dang, I didn't even realize Sia. Holy moly. Sia is all the way down here, A tier, but they're bomb damage. Whoa. Pretty nuts. But no. But yeah, this is, I just like I said, I just like looking at this thing, and then you see Arc. Arc is a glorified guild dummy. I don't really want to talk about it. This boss has been out. It's stand there. It's like, it reminds me of Lotus and Arc remind me of what Chaos Vellum and Chaos Crimson Queen used to be, right? Queen is just stand there, do damage, kill it. Don't really have to do too much mechanics at this point. And then Chaos Vellum was RNG. How, you kind of have to plan out how often when you use your cooldowns, because, to maximize the uptime of your cooldown so that, you're not wasting time, isn't wasting while Vellum is underground, things like that. This is kind of, and no one would say that Chaos Vellum is a good representation of DPS, right? It's just not. But I think this is like, I want to hear you guys' comments, what your guys' thoughts are. Do you guys like this? Do you not like it? Do you think that, obviously they admitted that this is just collecting data, right? But do you think there's a better way to kind of collect data to get best representation of damage and, balance of the classes? Do you think that, your class, whatever it is, can be better than this, can show up better than this? Or are you a dual blade that's just like, yeah, this is kind of what dual blade life is? Mercedes may want to reroll to Mercedes. Yeah. And again, guys, I told you Phantoms, disgusting. Phantoms are like, that damage is insane. Where's the Phantom? I can't go a podcast without talking about Phantom a little bit, but yeah, they definitely are faster than a Mulong, and yeah, pretty insane. I just love to see even these Mulong times. Like, these are obviously going to keep getting better and better, but yeah, Paladins, that's definitely going to be updated. Oh, geez, Blasters 442, Evan 350. Geez, Tazzle. Geez, Louise. Well, but yeah, other than that, man, I just want to share this. I think a lot of people, we're giving the criticism, we're kind of giving it, harsh criticism or complaining or giving their thoughts. Yeah, obviously, like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that this is, you got to take it with a grain of salt, but don't shoot the messenger. These guys put a lot of work in. They are doing it for us. They care about the game, and it's just data. Like it's just data. They're not skewing the numbers based off of, what their best interests are, their motives. It's just the numbers. Put in your data, do better damage, show it out, post it here, and so that we can, show that maybe your class isn't as bad as you think, or maybe your class is better than it's, that you can do more damage than this. Either way, thank you for sticking with me. Sorry I missed last week. I'm trying to get a guest up here. I wanted to have one this week, but things have kind of been hectic in my personal life and in work. But here it is. I'm enjoying making these podcasts. I really had a good time. Thank you for all the support. Thank you for all just all the support. I really appreciate it. Um, Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment if you have any questions, things you want me to talk about in the next patch is already going to be next week is already going to be patch arcs coming out. Maybe something else on top of it. You never know. These patches, these updates are getting pretty spicy. It feels like they have the main course, but then the dessert is even better. Kind of the second thing that isn't even really the headliner is better than the main, the main update. So excited to see, these things change. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, whatever it is. I'll see you guys next time.